2, 1. Let's go. It's time to Dad Up. Welcome to the Dad Up Podcast, the podcast for dads about dads being dads. Get ready for exciting guests talking about their experiences of parenting, the good and the not so good. Bang that subscribe button so you don't miss a single episode, and let's get started. Here is your host, Bryan Ward.
Welcome to another episode of Dad Up, everyone. Thank you guys very much for joining me. I'm excited for the guest that I have on today. He and I have gotten a chance to know each other a little bit over the last couple months. He's a superstar in the things that he's doing, but I want him to share a little bit about his background. I am so thrilled and honored to have the awesome Kelly Cardenas to Dad Up. Welcome to the show, brother.
Well, I appreciate it, man. You're the one that needs to be celebrated, not only being the best dad in the world, coaching, making us all feel bad, but also I found out that you've only had 2 jobs, and 2 jobs for as long. I mean, the one being in the Marine Corps and then with Citizens Bank. And you have stayed with those. I mean, tell us how, Bryan, you were able to have 2 jobs. Like most of us have 17. We're all Jamaican. You know what I'm saying? Like how could that happen? Your commitment is on another level, makes us all feel bad.
Well, thank you for that. For me, it's one of those things. I got out of high school, started to go to college, and then realized I wanted to take a break. I think pretty much everybody knows my story, but I wanted to take a break from college. And my dad said, well, if you're going to take a break, then you're going to start paying rent. And I didn't want to do that. So I started talking to other people about what I could do. And a couple of people had recommended the military. And I'd be honest, it had never crossed my mind to go into the military. I didn't have anybody in my family. Well, my grandfather was, but I didn't have really anybody in my family that had been in the military. And I talked to my manager, believe it or not, at the grocery store that I was working at high school. And he said, you need to go into the Marine Corps. And so I went down to the recruiting office, and that was that. I spent 4 years in the Marines. And then when I got out, I got a job as a very junior loan officer doing auto lending for the bank. And now I'm a manager of a department. I'm actually one of the youngest managers there. But I'm a manager of a department and have been there for next April will be 25 years. And, listen, the bank that I work at, it's a strong bank. It's a healthy bank. And I like everybody that I work with. And I just everybody looks for opportunities, right, Kelly? We all look for opportunities that will help us succeed and help us grow. And I had many opportunities come my way, but I just never found the right one that I felt I could be happy in and succeed in. So ultimately I've stayed where I've been happy, and it's been at the bank. So I work there. I have a corporate job. I work there all day. And then I coach Christian high school basketball. I coach at a Christian high school. And I've been doing that for several years. But I've been coaching for 20 years. So my boys are 23 and 20, and I've been coaching them since they were 4 years old. So, that's kind of my backstory. And it's just one of those things where I'm happy where I'm at and doing what I'm doing. So,
well, it's amazing. You're an inspiration to all of us, man. Well,
thank you. But enough about me, because this is really about you and the things that you're doing. Because you're a superstar, man. You talk about having only 2 jobs. I mean, you've got your hands in a lot of different things. And not only that, more importantly, you're a successful father. So for my listeners who may not know who you are, let's go. Let's backstory about Kelly. I want to know more about you, more about your history, kind of how you grew up, and then obviously transition into who you are today and the person you are today. And then obviously this is a dad podcast, so I want to know about your kids.
Yeah. Well, I think it all starts with my parents, man. I mean, that's the biggest part. And it's cool. I'm so blown away by what you're doing and how you're celebrating dads. And for me, it was that foundation from my dad, from my mom. And they gave me 3 things when I was growing up. Number 1, that I was awesome. Number 2, that I was beautiful. And number 3, that I could do anything as long as I put my mind to it. But just because I could do it, it didn't mean that it was my purpose. And I started off, man, I got you though, because you got 25 years in this job. You got 2 jobs. I've actually only had 1. And that one job throughout my whole time, and I learned this from my daughter, I was playing Legos with her and I asked her, I said, what does daddy do? Because I wanted her to kind of stroke my ego a little bit because,
Right.
we had opened businesses. We were in the professional beauty industry. I've written books, I've written my first book, speak and do all these things. And she turned to me and she didn't even flinch. She just turned to me and she said, you make people happy, daddy. And then she went back to playing Legos. And I
That's awesome.
realized at that point that literally that's been my only job. That's my purpose. And, it started in a double wide mobile home, cutting my best friend Will's hair. That turned into a career, a 29-year career in the professional beauty industry, working in the salons and then opening our own company and having salons throughout the country, getting to educate throughout the world with a phenomenal, little known company called Paul Mitchell. And now we've taken, and we always wanted to build leaders. So we actually sold the salons to people who had started with our company at minimum wage. And we sold the company to them. And now my focus is the podcast, is on speaking and writing and just continuing to make people happy.
That's awesome. So I want to back up a little bit because I want to talk about your parents.
Yeah.
I mean, you said that they helped you to teach you those three things, but really what they're giving you is affirmations, right? And I've talked about it before on my show, but affirmations to our kids are so powerful. They may not fully understand them, but as long as you continue to feed them those affirmations, they eventually become those people, right? For instance, my son, who's older, he's 23, but I had an affirmation for him when he was 2 years old. I used to say, oh gosh, now I'm drawing a blank. Right in the middle of my show, I'm drawing a blank. I used to say, you're a leader, you're a champion. And then he would respond every single time, I'm the best in the world. And I guarantee you, Kelly, if I bugged him right now and pulled him out and said, hey, come here, I want to say something to you. I'd say, you're a leader, you're a champion. He would know it to this day. I'm the best in the world. And it's just that positive affirmation to help them be the best that they could be. And you know what? At 23 years old, he graduated college in 3.5 years. He's got a job that's paying him almost $100,000 a year. And he's 23. He's making 3 times more money than I was making when I was 23. I mean, he's a remarkable young man, and he's very gifted and talented and smart and all that. But I honestly take it back to the way that he was raised, the way that his mother and I raised him, and the affirmations that we fed into him. So speaking to that, do you have those same affirmations, or do you have other ones that you use with your kids?
Well, I tell my kids I love them all the time, even to a point where my daughter is 12 years old, and she's like, I know. But this is the thing I always want to make sure and keep it personal, because a lot of times we have the tendency to get into routines. We fall in love with the routine, and we manage the people, right? And you can manage the routine, but you always got to love the people. And so when we get that switched around, and we get that switched around in business and our families, sometimes we get into the routine of date night, but we're not present with our wife. Sometimes we get into the routine of, I'm going to go and have ice cream with my kids, but we're not being present with them. Sometimes it's not about the ice cream. Sometimes it's just about being present. So that's a big thing with my dad. And my dad taught me that very early on, and we'll get to that later. But the other day when I get out of the car, or my daughter gets out of the car, it kind of goes like this. I love you, baby. She says, I know. She says, I say, you're the greatest in the world. She says, I know. I say, I love you, because I want to say it again. I love you, and I'm proud, or I love you, baby. And she looks at me and she's like, who wouldn't? And then she closes the door. That's our routine going to school right now. My son, I say, you're the greatest, son. He says, no, Dad, you're the greatest. And we go back and forth that way. But the meanings behind it, my mom was very specific on these. She told me when she was telling me I was awesome, she said, you're awesome. I don't want you to connect you to any of your accomplishments. So your grades are not you. You get an F, that F is not you, it's a grade. And she helped me to realize that if I got an F, I was still awesome. If I got a C, I was awesome. I got an A, I was awesome. And so she never connected my accomplishments to me being awesome. I was just awesome. Number 2, being beautiful. Never compare yourself to anybody else. And I had 2 brothers that are absolute crazy performers, and a doctor and a lawyer. And imagine coming behind that and being a hairdresser. So she always let me know, never compare yourself to anybody except you. And then that last one, that I could do anything that I put my mind to, but just because I could do it didn't make it right. And make sure that you were in line with your purpose. And I figured out my purpose when my 7-year-old daughter told me, Daddy, you make people happy.
Wow. I love that. And you know what? You've got two successful brothers, but you're successful in your own right. And the fact that your mom kind of put that on your mind, like, don't compare yourself to any, that's hard for kids to do, right? That's hard to I mean, it's even hard for adults to do. We all have these little, things in the back of our head where we're thinking about what other people are doing. And we always try to teach. I mean, you're making people happy. You're making people, coaching people. You hear it from some of these big speakers that are out there coaching people. Stop comparing yourself to others. And it's, even though it's hard for our kids to understand that, it's such a powerful, powerful lesson for them to learn. And well, let me ask you this, because that moment, if I don't have a daughter, but if I had a daughter and she said that to me at that moment, that would melt my heart. I mean, give me the emotion, give me the feelings that you were going through when she said that to you. I'm sure you were stunned. I'm sure you're like, you had to take a breath in them, for a moment. But give me the emotions that when she talked to you and said that to you.
Well, it lights me up. And Bryan, when I say that, that's literally every time I drop her off from school. So it's every single day. So when I say it to her, I say, I love her. And she just looks at me, she's like, who wouldn't? And she rolls on and she slams the door. It's every day. And I mean, she teaches me so much. The other day I said, baby, I just truly don't want you to ever compare yourself because she's a 12-year-old girl. Right. And she looked at, I said, I just always want you to be yourself. And she looked at me and she's like, duh, Dad. Everyone else is taken. And I was like, what? But she dropped wisdom on me. And it's the same thing with my little man. I think the biggest thing that my dad instilled in me, and I'm seeing in my kids, is honestly, like, live your life with no agenda. Because this is the thing that my dad's been on me and on me and on me, especially in the last couple of weeks. He's just been like, live your life with no agenda, because most people have a back end. Most people are giving you content so they could sell you something else. But when you come in with no agenda, and I've found in my life, this is the part that I've run with, is I don't have an agenda. Like, when people are like, what are you selling? Or what are you, I'm not selling anything. Like, and people ask me like, what do you do? I make people happy. And I want to know about them. But when we go into something with no agenda, and the greatest thing for us is that's what being a dad is about. It's not having an agenda. It's going in and serving at the highest level. And if we do that, you're going to see the 23-year-olds like you're seeing now that are running way past what we did. And the relay race will be in where we pass the baton and they're able to take it to that next level.
Yeah, I love that. And it's interesting that you bring up the fact that not only did your dad, I mean, you talk about your mom, but I mean, it sounds like your dad was kind of pushing you in kind of with these affirmations as well, going through life without an agenda. I wanted to ask you though, because you've got a son and a daughter, correct? How are you teaching them the lessons that your parents taught you? How are you teaching them those lessons? Is it the same? Is it different? How are you kind of transitioning that?
Well, I think it's a little bit different because my mom was 16 when she had my brother and 19 when she had me. So they were kids. They were kids having kids. And my parents I was born in England. We lived in Taiwan right afterwards. So these are young kids. My dad was only 22 years old when he had me, and my mom was only 19. And, she was living in a foreign country, and there wasn't the internet, there wasn't cell phones, there wasn't all these things. So she kind of had, I mean, you can imagine at 16 years old, she went over to another country and with my brother. And so these were things that my parents not only were saying to us, but more importantly, they were showing. My dad didn't have an agenda when he was serving people. My mom didn't have an agenda. She wasn't trying to sell anyone. She was just being kind. And they taught, I mean, through those things, what I noticed that my parents, whether it be my mom or my dad, my mom told me, you're awesome, you're beautiful, you could do anything. And what my dad was showing me all the time is be kind, be of contribution to people, make a lot of friends. And then finally, stay curious. And when you stay curious, it gives me goosebumps right now.
Yeah.
Like when you are kind to people, you make a lot of friends. And when you make a lot of friends, you're curious about all the other things that are possible in life, because when you get around them with no agenda, it's amazing how open people are. And that's when the magic really starts to happen.
That's when the attraction happens, right? Because if you make somebody, and I've said this many times, but I go about my day trying to make somebody else feel special, because when people want to feel special about themselves, right? They want to be told how good they are. They want to be told how nice they look. They want to be told all these things. They want to feel that way. So when you make people feel that way, people are naturally going to gravitate towards you. It's not selfish, but as long as you're making sure that other people are given the attention first to beyond yourself, like you said, that's when the magic happens, because that's when you really start to attract the attention around you. That's awesome. Now when we're you got your daughter, she's approaching those teenage years. We know how that goes, right? I mean, it sounds like she's getting a little bit of that chip on her shoulder kind of way, right? I know when my boys were going through that kind of that phase of getting into those teenage years, I could no longer hug them. I will say this, I got to back up. I will say this, my younger son, who's 20, I was frustrated with something yesterday, and I wasn't taking it out on my family, but I was frustrated. And my son came over and he gave me a hug, and he's like, Dad, it'll be cool. Just, relax. Everything's cool. So I still get those hugs from him, but I know when they were teenagers, they didn't want to hug us around their friends, right? They had that kind of I'm a big kid now. I don't need this anymore. But you got a daughter, she's approaching the teenage years. Here comes that transition of going through that stage, that phase. What's going to be your approach? How are you going to handle it? I mean, what advice could you give to other parents on how they can handle that part of it?
Well, I give the advice to every parent that is the one word piece of advice that my mom gave to me, which is like this: shit. Like there's going to be the time where you're the best parent in the world. Shit, forget about it, because you don't want to get attitude. There's going to be the time where you're the worst parent in the world. Shit, learn from it. Right. And so we just had the experience today. My daughter, for the first time, is wanting to go to the mall with her friends by herself. Well, Dad was like, oh, well, that'll be cool. Go hang with your buddies. Her mom, my wife, who's very wise, was like, I'm just going to go to the mall and I'll go shopping and I'll be in the mall so you can be okay. And it was at first she reacted to it. My daughter reacted to it. And then we sat down, and as opposed to me trying to be dad, what I did is I sat down and I wanted to know where she was coming from. And she said, Dad, it's a little embarrassing. My other friends don't have their their parents come in. And I said, I just want you to know, baby, that it comes from a love. It comes from the respect. And we will make sure that we're not in sight. You know what I'm saying? Like if we're at the mall, I'm going to make sure we're not in sight. And I actually told her, my wife's going to get mad at me for this. I said, baby, if you see your mom and she's lurking, text me. And then I'll text Mom to get out of there and hide. You know what I'm saying? And so having that relationship and talking with your kids and seeking to honestly to understand them, like not to be understood, not be like, yo, I'm your parent, you need to do this and that, not to be too much of the friend, but also, I mean, I think that people want to be validated. They want to feel important, and they want to know that you trust them. And I've got, we'll talk about it here in a bit, but there's a whole nother side to that, for me, I don't agree with. So,
well, let's go. Let's talk about it. Let's talk about it.
This was a thing, and one of my buddies is a really good dude. And he was like, yo, this is what I'm doing. And he heard from a pastor that you should drug test your kids. Now, for me, I was like, look, and all the guys were in, they were like, yeah, because you don't know what's happening today. And I said, guys, imagine your wife tells you she loves you. And then every time you come home at night, she checks your cell phone, sniffs your collar, and makes sure that all your clothes don't have any women's perfume on them. How long is that going to last? Because we've got to add trust. We have to trust our kids and love on them, and also understand and know that they're on loan to us. God loaned our kids to us. They're not our possession. And you know what? God is big enough. Matthew 6:33 says that seek ye first the kingdom of God as his righteousness, and all else will be added on. He didn't put an exception and be like all else except your kids, so control them.
Right.
No, seek ye first the kingdom of God and his righteousness, and all else will be taken care of. And he'll add that on. So what I would suggest is when you have teenagers like I do, and I'm in it right now, I am getting closer to Jesus than I ever have in my entire life, because I'm going to need him for these next couple of years.
Yeah, that's awesome. I'm glad you brought that up because listen, I got to tell you, people tell me, I hear people say it all the time. They say, well, we don't have a handbook on how to raise kids. There isn't a handbook. And I said, I completely disagree with you. There is a handbook. It's called the Bible. Read it, know it, learn it, because it will teach you how to be as a human being, how to treat others. And that will correlate, that will move into how you raise your kids. So yes, you do have a handbook, but listen, you're right. You know what? I don't disagree with your wife. I think I thought that was a good idea because in this world, as we know, there's things that are going on out there right now that is very, very sketchy. And we have to find ways to protect our kids, right? So I don't disagree with your wife wanting to do that. I think that was a bold move. However, on the flip side, I agree with you. I think that, hey, if she's out of sight, but she's kind of there in case anything happens, you guys aren't at home, you have to rush over to the mall or anything. She's there. Everything's good. I think that's wise. Now, I think you are going to be in the doghouse tonight, but but I will say that I agree. I follow those same lines. I mean, we kind of felt it. But listen, I'll say this: as parents, I'm going to say this to all the parents that are listening, watching, whatever it is you're doing, hearing this. If you know your child and you constantly are talking to them about the things that go on in their lives, and not only that, but you know the friends that they hang out with, and you understand who those friends are. In addition, you know the parents of those friends, then you shouldn't have any problem. There shouldn't be any reason why you need to drug test your kid. Right? I mean, seriously, I knew my boys. I knew them very well. I knew their friends. I knew their friends' parents. And if there was sketchy kids that they were hanging out with, we fixed it. And there was no need to worry about having to drug test and all this other stuff. But listen, constant communication will help with your kids. Asking your kid, hey, how was your day? And getting, oh, it's fine. That's not constant communication. Asking them open-ended questions about their day. And then continuing to ask them questions, not hounding them, but continuing to ask them. Show them that they're important to you and that you want to know about them. And they may ask you questions, answer their questions, right? Have those levels of communication. And you addressed it early in this interview, but you addressed it. You talked about presence. That's being present. Not being in your phone when you're talking to your kids. Not being in your phone when they're asking you a question. Not paying attention to the TV when they're trying to ask you a question. Those kind of things. Be present. Because I think if you have that level of presence and you're constantly talking with your kids and you're constantly knowing who they're hanging out with, the friends that they hang out with, and the parents of those friends, I don't think you're going to have any problems. And if you do, you fix it as parents. You fix it. So that's awesome. And was the mall a success or what?
Now it's actually happening right now.
Okay.
I think it's the biggest thing for us is, like I'm no authority on being a parent because I screw up a lot. Like I just screwed up on Friday Night Lights. I went and watched my son the other night and he was, they were in the playoffs and the ref was a high school kid. He's volunteering his time and I'm on the sidelines and the kid drops back and goes for longer than 7 seconds. Maybe it was 8 seconds. Maybe it was 7.5 seconds. And I yelled out, come on, that's longer than 7. And then I stopped and I was like, I'm that dad. I'm horrible. I screwed up. And I think one of the big things for us though, Bryan, is when we got to take our kids aside right away and be like, yo, I screwed up. Don't try and cover it. You're not going to be perfect as a parent and your kids are going to learn more from your mistakes than they're going to learn from you standing and saying, this is what you need to do because this is what I did. No, being a parent is literally screwing up shit, and then, I went off on my daughter the other day. We went to In-N-Out and I bought fries for her and her brother. Well, when we got back, there wasn't fries for her. So I told, or wasn't fries for her brother. So I told her, can you share with your brother? She got attitude. And then, I just grabbed her, pulled her in the other room. And I said, look, this is awful. And I got after her. And she very calmly took it. And then she said to me, this was hard, Bryan. She said, Daddy, if you remember when you were ordering, you were also on your phone. So you didn't hear her say the things back. And if you did, then you would have known that she only said one fry. And I sat there and at one point I wanted to be like old school Christmas story dad. I told you, and that's the rule. And then I was like, I realized I was wrong and I had to apologize to her. I had to apologize to him. And I think that as parents and especially as a dad, if you could take the time to apologize and illuminate when you are awful, your kids will learn more than they ever could.
Mm. Wow. Well, you know what? First of all, thank you very much for sharing that. It's a perfect example. Listen, you've said it before. You said it a couple times in this interview. We're not perfect parents. We're never going to be perfect. There's only one perfect being, and he's up above. So we're never going to be perfect. You're going to make mistakes. But listen, dads, and if there's a mom listening, great. But dads, I'm talking to you. Put your dang ego aside and own it. If you make a mistake, own it. I've done that many times. There have been many times where I didn't want to own it. There have been many times where I'm like checked out and I'm like, nope, I'm right here. But sometimes you just have to let it go, own it, apologize, because listen, that's the biggest lesson you could teach your kids is that, look, I'm an adult and I make mistakes. As a dad, as your dad, I make mistakes and I made a mistake. And for that, I'm sorry. And guess what? You have no idea how. Let me ask you guys this, just people that are listening to this, and Kelly, I'm asking you, but I'm asking everybody, how good does it feel when somebody apologizes to you? It feels good. Like, you know what? That person acknowledged that they did me wrong and they apologize for it. Imagine what your kids are feeling. I apologize, son. I messed up. I had an incident yesterday. It wasn't a big deal, but I had an incident yesterday. My older son, I thought he had eaten lunch because he had ordered something from DoorDash. Thought he'd eaten lunch. My younger son was coming home he's in college, but he was coming home to do our Christmas tree and stuff. So he had come home and he goes, hey, Dad, you want lunch? I'm going to go get something. And I said, yeah, sure. How about this? And he goes, okay, great. Does Blake want anything? And I go, no, he just ate. So then my younger son comes home with our food and my older son, Blake, comes out and he's like, bro, where's my food? And he's like, you didn't ask me if I wanted it. He's talking to my younger son. You didn't ask me if I wanted any food. And I said, hold on, before you start losing it on him, that's my fault. I thought you ate. So I told him not to get you anything. So don't get upset with him. You can get upset with me. I apologize. Literally, that's how the conversation went. And it was done. It was done and over with. So, I mean, that's a silly example, but like your example, she made it clear to you, hey, Dad, you messed up, not me. You messed up and you owned it. Parents, that's a huge, huge, huge lesson to learn is that, listen, we make mistakes. We're going to make mistakes. I'm going to make another mistake today, probably. When we get off this call, I'll probably make another one. So it's just own it. I'm glad that you mentioned that. It's very cool. Now, your daughter's 12. How old's your son?
My son is 10.
10. All right. So you got, I mean, do they get along okay? Because I know my boys, for instance, they love each other. They can hang out with each other. I love listening to their conversations, when they're laughing, joking, doing whatever, but they can get into it too. They're boys, right? They can get into it. I've had my wife in the other room hollering at me for help, trying to break them up because they can get into it. I mean, that happens with siblings. We don't always get along with our spouses, right? There's things that happen. We don't always get along with them, but with our kids, they're in close quarters all the time together. And now you got a 12-year-old and a 10-year-old. I mean, how's their relationship? Good? Do they have their moments?
They have their moments. They're brother and sister. And, I think that's the, it's, you just have to love them. You have to love them different and love them individually. And that's where, again, when you said that, there's only one playbook, but the playbook that you can read is principle based. It's not situation and circumstance based. And, my little son, he's got all kinds of joy in him. And I think one of the biggest things with us, when we're dealing with different types as a dad, especially dealing with different ages or different, genders, when we are, to realize that, they're looking at our reaction more than they're looking at the circumstance. And this was so prevalent when my son asked, I was making pancakes and they like me to make them in shapes. And so my daughter said, can you make me a dog? Well, a dog is not that hard to make as a pancake. You kind of drip it out, whatever. It kind of looked like a llama, but to her, it was a dog. And then my son is like, daddy, daddy. I said, what do you want, son? Because I was feeling myself. I was like,
Right,
I'm dad.
right.
I can make anything. I just made this dog, this llama and passed it off as a dog. What do you want? Anything. And my son was like, I want an Iron Man pancake. And I was like, what? Like an iron? I mean, how am I going to make a Marvel character out of, some batter? And I tried my hardest, Bryan, my hardest in the world. I tried to shape this thing, and my dad was standing right next to me. He's Campa. That's what my kids call him, but I call him Pops. And Pops was standing right next to me. I was making this thing. My dad was like, looking at it like, this does not look anything like Iron Man.
Right.
And when I got done,
he's critiquing you the whole time.
Oh, I whispered to my dad. I was like, Pop, this doesn't look anything like Iron Man. He was like, he said 3 words that changed my whole entire life. He said, sell it, boy.
There you go.
And I knew what I had to do. So I started singing this song called Iron Man Pancakes, Iron Man Pancakes, Iron Man Pancakes, Iron Man Pancakes. And my son was like, what are you saying, Dad? I said, Iron Man Pancakes, Iron Man Pancakes. I said, it's almost ready, son. You ready for the Iron Man Pancake? Are you ready for the Iron Man Pancake, son? He said, Dad, I'm ready for the Iron Man Pancake. And I scooped this thing up. This thing was a blob of burnt pancake. I flipped it over on his plate. And as I was singing Iron Man Pancake, I flipped it over. He looked at it. He paused. And it was like, I swear it was 10 minutes, but it was probably 2 seconds. But he just stared at it and it was silent. And everyone went silent. And then he looked at the thing and he looked up at me and he was like, Iron Man Pancake, Iron Man Pancake. And I was like, yes. He's like, I can't believe, Dad, you did it. I want you guys all to realize that our kids are waiting for our reaction. And my dad told me like this, that the only difference between a child and a camcorder, he said camcorder because my dad is old school.
Right.
The only difference between a child and a camcorder is that a camcorder has a stop, a pause, and a erase button. But your kids don't. They're waiting for your reaction. They're waiting for how you view it. And if I could tell you one more quick story.
Do it.
About my son. I was taking him to go see Dude Perfect. I got to have Dude Perfect on the podcast too, because my kids will think they're the greatest people in the world. So anyone out there, if you know Dude Perfect, you need to reach out to this guy, right? It's the only ask I have. But I got tickets to Dude Perfect. Called my buddy. He hooked us up. And then the day of, he hadn't sent me the tickets yet. And the day of, I called him. I was like, hey, we're going to Dude Perfect. And he's like, oh, yeah. And he's shuffling. I know that he ain't got the tickets. Ooh. He scrambles, calls me back. He's like, I got the tickets. He sent me the tickets. Well, I looked at the seats. When I looked at the seats, they were the worst seats in the entire place. Like the top level, like on top of the top level. Worst seats. He told me he was getting me front row. Oh. I called my dad and I said, Pop, I don't even want to go to this because we're in the very top. And I wanted my son to be VIP. I wanted him to be, he said 3 words again. Sell it, boy. He said, he will react the way that you react. So fall in love with this thing before you walk out the house and he will fall in love too. And as we're driving there, he said, Dad, where are we going? I said, I don't know. He said, are we VIP? I said, I don't know. I don't know yet, son. But when we got there, we were at the San Diego State Arena. You walk in on the top level. And as I walked in, I said, oh my gosh. He said, what, Daddy? I said, there's the VIP seats. And he's like, where, Daddy? And I pointed to the concrete bench that was on the very top of the whole entire arena. And he's like, are you kidding me, Dad? That's VIP. I said, yeah. He said, are we sitting there? I said, I don't know, son. I don't know. I can't promise you anything. And as we walked around the place, every time we saw one of those concrete, not even the seats, they weren't the seats. There was a concrete just ledge that you had to sit on. And it was the very top. Every time we walked by one, he was like, Dad, that's VIP. Are we in that one? And we finally got to the side, Bryan, not even like where the arena was sitting like this on the side. So you're looking at the side of the stage, worst seats in the house on the very top. And we get to the side, all the way to the side. And I said, oh my gosh, son. He said, what? I said, oh my gosh, look at our seats. We're in VIP. He said, VIP, Daddy. And he sat down on this concrete bench while everyone else is in a seat. You could not see these people. They were like this small. And he turns to me about 5 minutes into the show. And he said, Daddy, you know how I know we're in VIP? And I had to hold back my laugh. And he said, and I said, how, son? And he said, because you see all those people down in the front row? I said, yep. He said, they can only see what they could see. But we can see what they could see and what we could see. So that means we're VIP and we high five. And to this day, he thinks he was VIP and Dude Perfect with the worst seats in the house. Parents, dads, please understand that it is your reaction, not the circumstance, that will dictate the way that your kids react. So let's start getting excited about every single thing. And remember the 3 words that my dad taught me, and Campa or Pops, I call them Pops. Sell it, boy.
That's awesome. That's a great story. And you know what? I hope he does not watch this episode because it'll kill it for him. Right? Oh man, that's so good. I mean, you know, I think about that, and I think about I had my younger son he's a diehard Red Sox fan. I mean, diehard. And he will watch like baseball. They play baseball their whole lives. Baseball, I can watch the playoffs, I can watch the World Series, but they play 100+ games. I don't need to watch a regular season game. It does nothing for me, right? Like football, right? So he can watch every single game. He wants to, he has like the stats pop up on his phone for these play. I mean, he loves, that's how much he loves it. So I was able to get him tickets for, I'd never been to a World Series. The Red Sox were playing the Dodgers a few years ago, and I was able to get him tickets to the game. So I surprised him with the tickets, and he's like, first thing he wants to know, right? Where are we sitting? And I go, dude, we are sitting right behind home plate. And he's like, what? And I'm like, yeah, we were sitting right behind home plate. Now we were at the 500 level, but we were right behind home plate. Honestly, they were great seats. They really were. But we were at the top level at Dodger Stadium, right behind home plate. When we got there, he didn't even care about the seats. Like, he was like, we are right behind home plate. I cannot believe this. These are awesome. So, I mean, it's just like you said, the way, sell it. I mean, the way your reaction to everything. I mean, yeah, I didn't want to sit nosebleeds. I wanted to sit right in the dugout with the players, but right behind home plate. Are you kidding me? So yeah, that's a great story. And I love that. I love your reaction, because it even comes with when we're upset about something, how we react to that is going to cause what happens next, right? And it can be good or it can be bad. So that's a great lesson for parents. That's so awesome, Kelly. You know what? I am by far one of my favorite and best guests that I've ever had on the show, dude. I'm telling you, man, it's great stories. Let me ask you this for my listeners. I know we went a little long, and I hope you're okay with that, but I had to hear these stories. For my listeners that want to look you up, learn a little bit more about you. Obviously, we got the ticker tape going there, but what's the best place for them to do that? Let them have it.
Well, Instagram, the real Kelly Cardenas, kellycardenas.com is going to be the best. On LinkedIn, Kelly Cardenas, and then TikTok, it's the real Kelly Cardenas 23. Help me out with my TikTok game. I tell you, the best advice that I could give to any dad out there, seriously, is to love the mother of your children.
Oh yeah.
And when I say that, you didn't even ask the question, but it's something that my mom taught me from a very early age. She said, the best thing you could ever do for your kids is love your wife. And, in the event that you're not with your kid's mother, still love her, because again, these kids are like videotapes, and they are going to take the baton and they're going to continue on, and they're going to treat their woman in their life the same way that you treat their mother. So yeah, that's what I would say.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. I'm glad you brought that up, because it's so true. I've said it before that, as dads, it's important the way that we treat, now, whether you have a son or a daughter, from my case, 2 boys, but the way I treat their mom is a lesson to them how they're going to treat women. And the way that their mom, my wife, treats me is the way that a woman should treat a man. So like for you, for a daughter, I mean, the way that you treat your spouse shows her how a woman should be treated. So yeah, those are always, I mean, those are yeah, top 3, top 4 for sure. Lessons to learn for sure. Well, cool. Listen, Kelly, you and I have become friends over the last several months. I think I just followed you on TikTok this morning, as a matter of fact. But you and I have become friends, and I'm super glad that you took the time to come and share your experiences, your stories, your character. on Dad Up. I really appreciate it. And I'm looking forward to continuing our friendship, brother. I really am.
Well, I'm going to force you to be my friend for the rest of your life. And
Awesome.
anyone out there listening to this episode, listen to every single episode of the Dad Up podcast, guys. This is exactly what we need in our world. The better and better dads that we foster. And Bryan is locked into this. He's one of the only people that I know that is making it his mission to make dads better and giving us the resources. So, I mean, my hat's off to you, man.
Thank you very much for that, Kelly. I really appreciate it, brother. Appreciate you so much. Listen, everybody, thank you very much for joining me and Kelly on the Dad Up podcast. Make sure you guys are checking out all my episodes, as Kelly had said, but make sure you guys are subscribing if you haven't subscribed to my YouTube channel yet, and be sure to stay tuned for the next episode, all right? Thank you guys very much. Look forward to seeing you guys all soon.
Thanks for listening to the Dad Up podcast. Be sure to subscribe so you don't miss the next weekly episode. While you're at it, leave a rating and review. And if you know someone this show can help, be sure to share it with them. Want to learn more? Check out the website at daduptribe.com or leave Bryan a message on Instagram at daduppodcast.